6 years. That's all it took for the world to lose its innocence. From 1939 to 1945, humanity didn't just fight a war, it fought itself. Over 70 million people would die. Entire cities would be erased. Empires that had stood for centuries would collapse overnight. This is the story of the deadliest conflict in human history. A war so vast, so brutal, so total that it would reshape every corner of the globe. This is World War II. September 1939. The world is tired of conflict. World War I ended just 21 years ago. 10 million soldiers died in those trenches. Entire generations were lost. People want peace. Leaders want stability. Families want normal life back. But in Europe, something dark is moving. Germany, humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, crushed by economic depression, has found a new leader, Adolf Hitler. A man who promises to restore Germany's glory, to reclaim lost territory, to build an empire that will last 1,000 years. He speaks of racial purity, of German superiority, of eliminating those he considers enemies of the state, and millions believe him. By 1939, Hitler has already annexed Austria. He's seized Czechoslovakia. Britain and France have tried appeasement, giving him what he wants to avoid war. It doesn't work. On September 1, 1939, at 4:45 in the morning, German forces cross into Poland. Not with warnings. Not with negotiations. With tanks. With planes. With a speed no one has ever seen before. They call it Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Armored divisions punch through Polish defenses. Dive bombers scream from the skies. Civilians flee in terror as their cities burn. Poland's cavalry charges against German tanks, a medieval tactic against modern warfare. They don't stand a chance. Cities fall in days. Armies collapse in weeks. Britain and France, bound by treaty to defend Poland, declare war on Germany. And just like that, the world is at war again. But this time, no one knows just how bad it will get. At first, many believe it will be short. A quick conflict. Germany will be stopped just like before. They are wrong. Very, very wrong. For months, there's an eerie calm. The phony war, they call it. Armies face each other across borders, but little fighting happens. Then, in April 1940, Germany strikes again. Denmark falls in hours. Norway in weeks. In May, Hitler turns west. The Netherlands surrenders after 5 days of fighting. Belgium holds out for 18 days before collapsing. Then comes France. France, with the largest army in Europe. France, protected by the Maginot Line, a supposedly impenetrable wall of fortifications. France, a nation that once ruled the continent. The Germans don't attack the Maginot Line. They go around it. Through the Ardennes forest, a place the French thought impassable for tanks. German panzers pour through the gap. They race toward the English Channel, cutting the Allied armies in two. At Dunkirk, 400,000 British and French soldiers are trapped against the sea. It looks like the end. But then something miraculous happens. Hundreds of civilian boats, fishing vessels, pleasure crafts, ferries, cross the channel to evacuate the troops. Over 9 days, 338,000 men are rescued. They leave behind all their equipment, but they survive. Winston Churchill, Britain's new prime minister, calls it a miracle of deliverance. But France is finished. On June 22, 1940, just 6 weeks after the invasion began, France surrenders. In the same railway car where Germany surrendered in World War I, Hitler accepts France's defeat. The world watches in disbelief. If France can fall in 6 weeks, who is safe? Across the English Channel, Britain stands alone. Churchill speaks to his people. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Germany prepares Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain. But first they must control the skies. Summer 1940. German bombers and fighters swarm across the English Channel. Their mission: destroy the Royal Air Force and clear the way for invasion. The Battle of Britain has begun. British pilots, many barely out of their teens, scramble into their Spitfires and Hurricanes, sometimes flying 4-5 missions a day. Exhausted, outnumbered, but they have advantages. Radar, a new technology that gives them warning of incoming attacks. They're fighting over home territory. And they have something else. Desperation. The battle rages through the summer. Dogfights fill the skies above England. Pilots on both sides die by the hundreds. By September, Germany realizes they can't win air superiority. So Hitler changes tactics. If he can't destroy the RAF, he'll break British morale. The Blitz begins. Night after night, German bombers darken the skies over London. Then Coventry, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham. Cities burn. Buildings collapse. Families huddle in underground stations, using subway tunnels as bomb shelters. Children are evacuated to the countryside, sent away from their parents, possibly forever. Over 40,000 civilians die in the bombing. 1 million homes are destroyed. But Britain refuses to surrender. Because this war is no longer about territory. It's about survival. About whether democracy or fascism will rule Europe. Hitler postpones the invasion of Britain indefinitely. It's his first major defeat. Meanwhile, far away in the east, another war is already raging. Since 1937, Japan has been expanding across Asia. Their empire is growing and they need resources, oil, rubber, metal, to sustain it. China bleeds. In Nanjing, Japanese soldiers commit atrocities that shock even their own allies. Hundreds of thousands are murdered. Villages disappear. Millions die, often forgotten by Western history. The war is spreading quietly, relentlessly. America watches from across the Pacific. President Roosevelt wants to help Britain, but the American people want no part of another European war. Then everything changes. December 7, 1941. A quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii. Sailors on battleships are eating breakfast, writing letters home, sleeping in. Then at 7:55 a.m. the sky explodes. Japanese planes swarm over Pearl Harbor. Torpedoes slam into battleships. Bombs tear through decks. The USS Arizona erupts in a fireball, killing 1,177 men in seconds. Sailors drown trapped in steel coffins as ships capsize. Men leap into burning oil on the water. In 2 hours, over 2,400 Americans are dead. 8 battleships are sunk or damaged. Hundreds of planes destroyed. The next day, President Roosevelt addresses Congress. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked. America declares war on Japan. Then Hitler makes a fatal mistake. He declares war on America. Now the sleeping giant is awake. And when America enters the war, the conflict becomes truly global. This is no longer a European war. This is no longer an Asian war. This is World War II. The world is now divided. On one side, Germany, Japan, Italy, the Axis powers. On the other, Britain, the Soviet Union, the United States, China, and dozens of others, the Allies. More than 60 nations will be pulled into this storm. There is no corner of Earth untouched. Africa, Asia, Europe, the Pacific Islands, the Atlantic Ocean, the Arctic Circle. Everywhere people are fighting and dying. June 22, 1941. Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. 3 million German soldiers pour across the border. The largest invasion force in history. Stalin, who had signed a non-aggression pact with Hitler just 2 years earlier, is caught completely off guard. The Germans advance with terrifying speed. They encircle entire Soviet armies. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers surrender or die. By December, German troops can see the spires of Moscow. Then the Russian winter arrives. Temperatures drop to 40 below zero. German soldiers, equipped for a quick summer campaign, freeze in their trenches. Tanks won't start. Weapons jam. Men lose fingers and toes to frostbite. The Soviets counterattack. The Eastern Front becomes the most brutal battlefield in human history. At Leningrad, the Germans lay siege for 872 days. Over 1 million civilians starve to death. People eat wallpaper paste, leather belts, anything. At Stalingrad, the battle becomes personal. Hitler and Stalin both refuse to give up the city. Soldiers fight for ruins, for staircases, for single rooms. Snipers duel across collapsed buildings. Hand-to-hand combat in sewers and basements. The average life expectancy of a Soviet soldier arriving in Stalingrad is 24 hours. Winter comes again. German troops are surrounded. Hitler orders them to fight to the death. When the Battle of Stalingrad finally ends in February 1943, over 2 million people are dead or wounded. It's the turning point of the war. The Germans begin their long retreat. But the Soviets don't just push them back. They pursue them with vengeance. The fighting remains savage. The Germans employ a scorched earth policy, destroying everything as they retreat. By the time Soviet forces reach Berlin, they've lost over 26 million people, soldiers and civilians combined. More than any other nation in history. The Eastern Front isn't just a battle. It's annihilation. While Europe tears itself apart, the war rages across the globe. In North Africa, British and German forces clash across scorching deserts. Tank battles stretch across hundreds of miles. The Desert Fox, German General Rommel, becomes legendary. But the Allies slowly push the Axis back, eventually driving them out of Africa entirely. In the Atlantic, German U-boats hunt in wolf packs, sinking thousands of merchant ships trying to supply Britain. The Battle of the Atlantic becomes a desperate struggle to keep supply lines open. Sailors live in constant fear. A torpedo strike means death in freezing water within minutes. In the Pacific, the war is unlike anything seen in Europe. American forces must capture islands one by one. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, Guadalcanal, Tarawa. Japanese soldiers fight to the death, almost never surrendering. They see capture as dishonor worse than death. Kamikaze pilots deliberately crash their planes into American ships. Thousands die in these suicide attacks. In the jungles of Burma and the Philippines, soldiers fight through monsoons, disease, and brutal terrain. Everywhere the cost is staggering. But perhaps the darkest chapter of the war happens far from any battlefield. Behind walls. In forests. In camps with names that will echo through history. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Dachau, Bergen-Belsen. The Holocaust. It begins with loss. Jews are stripped of citizenship, banned from professions, marked with yellow stars. Then comes forced relocation. Ghettos where thousands are crammed into blocks, starving. Then comes the final solution. Jews are rounded up across Europe, loaded onto cattle cars, told they're being resettled. Instead, they're taken to death camps. Families are separated on arrival. Those who can work are sent to labor. The elderly, the sick, children, they're sent immediately to gas chambers. Told they're going to shower. They never come out. 6 million Jews are murdered. Along with millions of others. Roma people, disabled individuals, homosexuals, political prisoners, Soviet POWs. Not in the heat of battle. Not in the chaos of war. But systematically, industrially, with bureaucratic efficiency. When Allied soldiers finally liberate the camps, they find mountains of corpses. Survivors who are living skeletons. Evidence of medical experiments. Hardened soldiers weep at what they see. This isn't just war. This is humanity losing its soul. By 1944, the Allies are ready to strike back at Fortress Europe. The largest invasion in history is being planned. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Just after midnight, thousands of paratroopers drop into Normandy, France. Many land miles off target. Some drown in flooded fields. At dawn, the naval bombardment begins. 5,000 ships crowd the English Channel, the largest armada ever assembled. Then the landing craft head for shore. 5 beaches. Code names: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. At Omaha Beach, it's a massacre. German machine guns are positioned perfectly. The first wave is cut down before reaching the sand. Bodies float in the surf. Some units lose 90% of their men in the first hour. But they keep coming. Wave after wave. Because failure means the war continues. Because retreat means Europe remains enslaved. And slowly, painfully, the Allies push forward. By the end of the day, 150,000 troops are ashore. Over 4,000 are dead. But the invasion succeeds. Over the next months, the Allies fight through the hedgerows of France. Each field is a fortress. Each village a battle. Paris is liberated in August. Crowds weep in the streets. In the east, the Soviets are closing in from the other direction. Germany is being crushed from both sides. Hitler launches one last desperate gamble, the Battle of the Bulge. In the frozen Ardennes forest, German forces attack American lines. For weeks, the battle hangs in balance. American soldiers hold Bastogne while surrounded, refusing to surrender. Eventually, the German offensive collapses. Now the end is inevitable. Allied bombers turn German cities into infernos. Dresden, Hamburg, Berlin. Firestorms consume entire neighborhoods. Tens of thousands of civilians die. The cost of victory is horrifying. April 1945. Soviet forces surround Berlin. They fight street by street, building by building. In his bunker beneath the city, Hitler realizes the end has come. On April 30th, he kills himself. 1 week later, Germany surrenders unconditionally. Europe breathes again. But the war is not over. In the Pacific, Japan refuses to surrender. Allied forces are planning Operation Downfall, the invasion of the Japanese home islands. Estimates suggest it could cost 1 million Allied casualties. And tens of millions of Japanese. Then President Truman makes a decision that will haunt history. America has developed a new weapon, the atomic bomb. August 6, 1945. Hiroshima. At 8:15 a.m., a single American bomber drops a single bomb. A flash brighter than 1,000 suns. A mushroom cloud rises 60,000 feet. 70,000 people die instantly. The city is erased. Japan doesn't surrender. 3 days later, August 9th. Nagasaki. Another flash. Another city destroyed. 40,000 more dead. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito addresses his people by radio for the first time. Japan surrenders. The war is finally over. 6 years. Over 70 million dead. Soldiers. Civilians. Children. The Soviet Union lost 26 million. China lost 20 million. Germany lost 7 million. Poland lost 17% of its entire population. Cities across Europe and Asia are rubble. Millions are homeless. Refugees wander roads searching for family members who will never be found. But from the ashes, a new world order rises. The United Nations is formed, a hope that nations will settle disputes without war. Two superpowers emerge from the conflict, the United States and the Soviet Union. Within years, they'll be locked in the Cold War, bringing the world to the brink of nuclear annihilation. Germany is divided. Korea is divided. Europe is split by an iron curtain. The colonial empires of Britain and France begin to crumble. Dozens of new nations will emerge. The shadow of World War II stretches into the future. Into politics. Into borders. Into technology. Into art, literature, and film. Into your life today. Because World War II didn't just end in 1945. It shaped the world you were born into. Your freedoms. Your fears. Your global alliances. The United Nations. NATO. The European Union. Nuclear weapons. The space race. Modern human rights law. All forged in those 6 years. 6 years that proved how cruel humans can be. 6 years that showed the depths of human evil in the Holocaust and the firebombing of cities. But also 6 years that showed human courage. Resistance fighters risking everything. Soldiers storming beaches knowing they'd likely die. Ordinary people hiding refugees in their homes. 6 years that showed how far humans will go to survive. And how desperately we must fight to never let it happen again.